Huh? It's happening. Isn't that neat? Who saw that coming? Right? Right? Here we are again. So neat. Right? It's neat. Good morning. Good day. Good afternoon. Good evening. Salutations. It's Thursday. Thirsty Thursday. Right? You are watching Get Your News On with Ron, the world's first viewer-curated streaming news show. We got a crazy show today. I noticed I was sitting like way far away. I don't know why I was doing that. Why was I doing that? I don't know. But we have an interesting show today. So we've been talking a lot on this show about how the voting machines in California have not really been unrolled in real time yet, which they haven't, and that all the preliminary testing that has been done in a contained situation, it's all failed miserably. Well, guess what? We have the details on that. And we're going to be going through some of the details on what specifically has failed and what specifically has been tested. Spoiler alert, it ain't good. There's a lot of warning signs here, folks, and that's putting it very gently. But first, a lot of you guys have been bringing this to my attention. In fact, Joe, Edwin, and Jack, all of you guys have been tweeting about this morning, and there's probably more of you. So thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. There was a debate yesterday, which I'm sure a lot of you watched. I live tweeted it because that's the only way I can possibly enjoy these things. And, the one thing that I enjoy, too, is, by the way, John Cusack retweeted one of my tweets last night. That was my big... That was really neat for me. John Cusack retweeted one of my tweets. I said something to my fiance. I was like, hey, John Cusack retweeted me. And she was like, oh, that's great. You like that sad music guy movie he does. That was what she said, which, of course, is a reference to High Fidelity, which is one of my favorite books and movies. It's a fantastic book. It's a fantastic movie, too. It's one of those things where not a lot got lost in translation, and both are great. But anyway, so I live tweeted it. It was pretty much thanks to Mike Bloomberg being there. It was made into a Jerry Springer episode, really. The debate last night was just Jerry Springer with people in formal attire who were running for office. It was pretty bad. Shockingly, it wasn't even the worst that we've had. Like the one at CNN was even freaking worse. So there you go. Yeah. So, but here's what happened. They posted the full they posted the full video of what went down, and they omitted a certain something. Let's take a look here. So check this out. In its upload to YouTube, NBC News cut out the part of the debate where the candidates were asked if the popular vote winner in the primary should be the nominee, and every single one except Bernie Sanders said, not necessarily. In other words, all right, so according to this transcript, that part should come before the closing statement. So they omitted this part. Now here's Joe, my editor. Joe was willing to share the part that they omitted. So let's check this out.
We are less than 2 weeks away from a national primary. And I want to ask all of you this simple question. There's a very good chance none of you are going to have enough delegates to the Democratic National Convention that clinches this nomination. Okay? If that happens, I want all of your opinions on this. Should the person with the most delegates at the end of this primary season be the nominee, even if they are short of a majority? Senator Sanders, I'm going to let you go last here because I know your view on this. So instead, I will start with you, Mayor Bloomberg.
Whatever the rules of the Democratic Party are, they should be followed. And if they have a process, which I believe they do,
I'm trying to do
so
this,
that
yes or no,
everybody else,
fast.
everybody can.
So you want the convention to work its will?
Yes.
Senator Warren.
But a convention working its will means that people have the delegates that are pledged to them, and they keep those delegates until you come to the convention. All of the people.
All righty. Vice President Biden?
Play by the rules.
Yes or no? Leading person with the delegates, should they be the nominee or not?
No, let the process work its way out.
Mayor Buttigieg?
Not necessarily, not to listen.
Senator Klobuchar?
Let the process work.
Senator Sanders?
Well, the process includes 500 superdelegates on the second ballot. So I think that the will of the people should put down, yes.
Thank you, guys.
Most votes should become the nominee.
And the people cheered.
We are not done yet.
And the people cheered. And, in fairness to Chuck Todd, who I'm not a fan of, but he's right. 5 no's and a yes. Chuck Todd actually summed that up accurately. And he might have even done that all by himself. But that was an accurate summary. And here's what I had to say about it. This is what I had to say about how you can summarize what just happened there and that question. Which, by the way, NBC omitted this part when they posted the video of the debate. They omitted this part. They didn't let you see this part. Translation of that last question, and I was tweeting this in real time, so this is what I was referring to when I said that last question. Is cheating and thwarting the will of the people okay? Every candidate except Bernie, yeah, that's fine. Bernie, no, that ain't cool. This is why half the country doesn't bother voting. So that's what they omitted. You want to watch it one more time? Here, we can watch it once more. This is what NBC omitted deliberately from the video that they posted. They omitted this intentionally. Oh, jumped on me. There's Chuck Todd.
A national primary. And I want to ask all of you this simple question. There's a very good chance none of you are going to have enough delegates to the Democratic National Convention to clinch this nomination. Okay? If that happens, I want all of your opinions on this. Should the person with the most delegates at the end of this primary season be the nominee, even if they are short of a majority? Senator
Chuck Todd sounds like he doesn't know exactly what he's saying, but he knows it's important. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I always say Chuck Todd is an average actor who got a long-standing gig as a news person. He's not a news person. He's not a reporter. He's not a journalist. He is an actor. He is an average one at best. And he's just kind of a mouthpiece for the establishment. Well, he is just doing one long commercial. He is the longest running commercial actor in the history of the field. Like, he doesn't know exactly what he's saying. He just knows it's real important. But anyway, here's what he says, and this is interesting.
Senators, I'm going to let you go last here because I know your view on this.
I know. This is how we're going to cheat you. That was his flowery, friendly, diplomatic way of saying, this is how we cheat you. I know your view on this because this is how we're going to cheat you. You have the most support. Everybody knows that. The most amount of people want to see you be the nominee. You have the base. You. But this is how we can make sure you're not the nominee anyway. This is how we can do it. So I'd imagine you're not a fan of this. That's what they're laughing about it. And a hand-picked audience is joining them in the laughter because that's hilarious. It's hilarious that we don't have a real democracy. It's hilarious that the will of the people can be thwarted by a bunch of rich people in a dark room with cigars. It's hysterical. And then that person that they handpicked can go on to lose to Donald Trump because that's not who the people actually want, so they stay home. That's hysterical. And then it's hysterical when Trump gets reelected and does nothing about the upcoming climate catastrophe and Florida gets to be underwater. It's hilarious. It's freaking hysterical. We're not going to have a planet for our kids and our grandchildren. That's hilarious. Thousands of people get to go uninsured. Millions of people can continue to not have health insurance. And they can die for preventable things in the richest country in the world. Hilarious. Hey, did you have the gall to think you should get a college degree? Here's debt for the rest of your fucking life. Hysterical. So funny. So funny. Wow. Hilarious. And they're laughing about it. An audience of people laughing about this. Yeah, we don't. Here's a guy who could beat Trump. Here's how we're going to make sure he's not the nominee. Here, after this Jerry Springer gossip column of a debate that we had, which wasn't even the worst debate. The one at CNN was even worse. Who takes this seriously? Who in their right mind takes this system seriously? Or think it's something to be celebrated? This is professional wrestling.
So instead, I will start with you, Mayor Bloomberg.
Whatever the rules of the Democratic Party are, they should be followed. And
In
if
other
they
words,
have a
yes.
process, which I
Thwart the
believe
will of
they
the
do,
people.
Trying to do
so
this
that
yes.
Thwart the will of the
everybody else-
people.
Everybody can
Translation to his answer, I bought my way to this point so far. Why should I change?
You want the convention to work its will.
yes.
Senator Warren.
But a convention working its will means that people have the delegates that are pledged to them, and they keep those delegates
So the
until you
leading
come to
person?
the convention. All of the
Okay.
people.
All righty. Vice President Biden?
Play by the rules.
Yes or no? Leading person with the delegates, should they be the nominee or not?
No, let the process work its way out.
Mayor Buttigieg?
Not necessarily, not to listen.
Senator Klobuchar?
Let the process work.
Senator Sanders?
Well, the process includes 500 superdelegates on the second ballot. So I think that
All right.
the will of the people should
Okay.
prevail, yes. Person
thank you,
who has the
guys.
most votes should become the nominee.
5 noes and a yes.
We are not done yet. We're
And there you have it. There you have it. NBC omitted that part. Why? Why'd they omit that part? Maybe it's because everybody cheered when Bernie Sanders said what he said. Maybe it's because everybody cheered. Throughout the course of the debate last night, there were 3 pro-billionaire questions asked. It's almost like maybe NBC thinks that somebody like a Mike Bloomberg might cut them a check for whatever someday. Might cut them a chuck. That's what I said. Thinking about Chuck Todd. Thinking about Chuck. Which, you know what? In fairness to him, I like the way he sped that along and he didn't let anyone just ramble on for too long. I like the fact that he did that and he summed it up for the audience. He said, all right, so that's everyone. Bernie Sanders is the only one who says yes to that. That the will of the people should be obliged. Bernie Sanders, only one who said yes to that. Everyone else said no. Isn't it interesting that Pete Buttigieg trusts you to make a decision when it comes to healthcare, which is code for I'm going to let the private insurance companies continue to do what they do. He trusts you. He trusts you to do that, but he doesn't trust you to pick a nominee for president. So next time you hear Pete Buttigieg talk about how much he trusts the American people when it comes to healthcare, which is his flowery way of saying, I'm going to let the status quo stay, because that's what he's trying to do. Remember, he doesn't trust you to pick a nominee. So that's a bunch of bullshit he's throwing at you. He trusts the American people. No, he doesn't. He doesn't trust you. He trusts an app that his insider friends developed. He trusts that they'll cheat for him. Liz Warren doesn't trust you either. She didn't trust you. She doesn't trust you to sniff out the fact that she waffles on policy every other week. Joe Biden doesn't trust you. Do you really need an explanation for that one? A guy who trusts the people wouldn't start his campaign at a fundraising dinner with Comcast. Mike Bloomberg sure as hell doesn't trust you because he's just bought his way up to this point. He's a billionaire. He's a racist oligarch who says, shut up and take it because I have a D next to my name. Which, by the way, I want to have a quick aside here. One time, not too terribly long ago, it was a little over a year ago, I was on a show that's a little more centrist in its leanings. And we were having a conceptual conversation about the lesser of two evils. And I'm like, you know what? Here's the problem. The Overton window has shifted so far to the right. And when you keep going lesser of two evils, when's it going to stop? When's it going to stop? Eventually, a Democrat is going to look like Donald Trump and a Republican is going to be a literal neo-Nazi. That's what I said. And I was greeted with an eye roll. My response was an eye roll. Mike Bloomberg is running for president as a Democrat. Tell me how he's different than Donald Trump. I'll wait. And a literal neo-Nazi ran as a Republican in Illinois not too long ago. A literal open neo-Nazi ran in Illinois. I don't take any joy in being right on that one, by the way. I take no joy whatsoever. But just so you know, this is what blue no matter who, lesser evil, this is what that gets you. And my analogy, when's it going to stop? Well, it already got to that point. So is it going to get worse? Is it going to get worse? We've gotten to that point now. When's it going to stop? Pick, America. Here's a billionaire racist oligarch. And here's a billionaire racist oligarch with a D next to his name. And the D came recently, by the way. Because this guy also endorsed George W. Bush. You know, I swear I woke up in the best mood. I really did. Man. All right. So that's the part of the debate NBC doesn't want you to see. But we'll show it to you here. All right. So, guys, this is more bad news, unfortunately. So this was shared with me by Robin. Thank you very much for doing this, Robin. And this goes into what we can expect coming up in California. Now, we've been talking about the way in which there have already been a lot of red flags in California. There's already been a lot of red flags all across the country. You know, in Nevada, they're using this Google Sheet system that has a lot of red flags. I'm trying to think of a different word, but it's like a different phrase there. But it just keeps coming back to red flags. I mean, you guys know what I mean. Whatever. But here in California, we've had quite a few. One of the big ones being, hey, we're using these new machines for the first time. And they've never really been unrolled anywhere. And where they have been unrolled, well, they failed. Okay, so here's what we mean by that. Here's some looks at some actual results that the corporate media ain't going to show you. They'll gloss over it. They'll be like, oh, in some beta tests, this has failed. We talked about that. There was a report, I believe it was even NPR, that said, oh, yeah, this has failed in in various capacities. Here's specifically what they're referring to. Okay. So here's an independent study that was prepared for the Secretary of State, prepared for the California Secretary of State. They did this on Christmas Eve, for crying out loud. December 24th, 2019. We're going to skip down to some of the results here. And you're going to notice a couple things all the results have in common. Okay. And then we're going to decide if these machines get to pass and go on to another grade. We'll decide together. I don't want to be a spoiler here, but all right. So first of all, scope limitation. Only the following systems and devices were tested during this examination: the VBL, Tele, including the scanners and file transfer file and database systems, BMG, and Format OS. It goes into detail about what all that specifically means when it gets to the specific results. Here's the important part for right now. Any and all other parts of the system, including the election management system, were not part of this test process. No comment can be made as to the security of the functions used to create the cryptographic keys employed to secure the system and to generate the election definitions. So basically, the overall security mechanism, the overall population of this data, we're not really sure how that's going to work out. We really don't know. There's been no formal testing. It wasn't even included on this test specifically. So we're totally left in the dark there, which is what they did in Iowa. And look at how Iowa turned out. We were completely left in the dark on that app, on the mechanisms of that app, on who specifically was behind that app, on the conflicts of interest they may or may not have had. And look what happened in Iowa. What did we find out later? Well, this app was developed by people, by a company whose umbrella includes, or who umbrella at the top is acronym, and the person of acronym is married to a senior strategist for Pete Buttigieg. They're open Pete Buttigieg supporters. These are all people from the Hillary and Obama campaigns. Little bit skewed, folks, just a little bit. Okay, so these overall election management systems, they weren't even tested. All right, so you know that. Okay, so here's some of the results of the test. Locks and tamper seals, subject to picking and removal. Okay, were the locks and tamper seals, are they subject to picking and removal? Lock picking was attempted and was successful using standard widely available lock picks in standard techniques. So basically, if you know how to pick a lock, you can tamper with voting results in a supposed democracy that is the emblem of the world, or is the envy of the world. So unrestricted access to workstation cases. The cases of the command control stations were not secured. You gotta laugh. You gotta laugh to stay sane. You really do. The cases were open. The cases were open in seconds without using any tools. They didn't use shit. They were just able. They were just able to get into it. They were just able. This is wow. So that's the status final. So it failed. He completely failed. So yeah, they were able to pick the locks, and you were able to get into the cases of these machines. You're able to get into it. Did you need any tools? No. It's not like they had some dude and they were like, okay, look, if some dude breaks in here with a crowbar and works at it for 20 minutes and nobody notices, they can get in. Then it's like, okay, well, that's probably, but like, no tools necessary. They just, if you know how to pick a lock, basically know how to pick a lock, maybe wear a trench coat in case you have a little pick thing you don't want people to see, and you're golden. You're golden. I mean, you don't even really need those tools. It might help. Okay. Once access was gained, any BIOS password could have been removed. This makes it possible to boot the machine using an outside operating system on a USB drive. In addition, there is no disk encryption, so the hard disk could be directly accessed, and all data files were accessible and alterable. Basically, that means they can just access and alter anything. That's pretty much what that means. And by the way, someone with a lot of tech knowledge would be able to really break down just how freaking terrible this is. I'm just a dude with a regular average person amount of, okay, these are how machines work. I'm not a tech guy at all. You know that because I use phrases like tech guy. That's, who says that? Not tech people. Unless they're asked specifically, hey, are you a tech guy? And they say, yeah, I'm a tech guy. What's the problem? Did you try turning it off and turning it back on? Did you try that? Please try that. Even Lucy's like, yeah, even I know this is ridiculous. I get it. You might as well just have me tally the votes. Did you hear Lucy meow? Or do you guys just think, she's here. Do you want to come? I moved my guitar, and I don't think she likes it. Lucy's the cat, by the way. I moved my guitar. It's right here now in case I want to just grab it, and I don't think Lucy likes it. It's her pathway to my lap is a little different now. She's not a fan. She's letting me know by standing on the floor meowing. She's like, the guitar was somewhere else and I liked it better. You should move it. Here she comes. She's like, all right, I didn't like the path I had to go, but I'll live with it. I'll accept it. Continue talking about how our voting machines are completely ridiculous. All right. Okay. So the configuration of the system workstations presented did not conform, which provides that all systems shall provide security. Okay. So any unauthorized physical access shall leave physical evidence that an unauthorized event that take place. Voting systems shall only have physical ports and access points that are essential to voting operations. Access points such as covers and panels shall be secured by locks and tamper evidence. So basically, they don't meet any of these requirements. Basically, this is all the stuff that they don't meet. This is what it did not conform to. All this stuff. No physical evidence. There's points that don't need to be there, and they're easily accessible. Basically, they don't conform to that. Other than that, they're golden. They're very secure, except for being completely insecure. That's basically a nuts and bolts, pun intended, summary of what all that means. Okay. So ability to boot from USB. Booting from a USB drive was not disabled on any of the systems. As such, gaining physical access to the machines allowed access to both the operating and application files. This was performed by booting an external USB disk without forensic applications. This attack could be conducted by an elections official insider or a vendor insider. A voter would not have sufficient access to the system to successfully complete the prerequisite defeat of physical security without leaving evidence of the attack. All right, so if it was a voter, at least there'd be some evidence. So CVSS 7.21b states voting system equipment shall provide controls that permit or deny access to the device's software and files. Booting from a USB drive gives access to all files not on NetApp. So this is also a non-conformance. So in other words, there's a lot of access to the software that can easily be done by a vendor insider or an elections official. A voter would at least leave some evidence behind. But either way, it doesn't conform. It does not meet the standards. The system also does not conform to CVSS 7.3b, which states voting systems shall only have physical ports and access ports that are essential. All right. So high dependency on root access. Root access is required for many regular operations. These include, but are not limited to, updating cryptographic keys used to protect and verify the integrity, blah, blah, blah. Access to the application binaries, recovering. All right. This attack could be conducted by an elections official insider or vendor insider. This vulnerability, combined with easy access to the system rats, results in not conforming to CVSS 2.14f, which provides all systems shall protect against any attempt at improper data entry or retrieval. In other words, improper data entry, they got an easy point of reference to that, especially if you're a poll worker yourself, or an election official, rather. Lack of full disk encryption. No component of the system has full disk encryption. Oh, wow. Lack of validified FIPS cryptographic modules. The system's VBL, Tally, BMG, and format utilize the Linux operating system at the base platform. The cryptographic modules employed for cryptographic processing. This is not compliant with CVSS 7.54.3, which states using a cryptographic module that has not been validated against FIPS as a violation of the requirement as stated in SVSS 7.5.4a. Now, I do not know all the text ins and outs of that specific one, but basically what that means in very, 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 very elementary explanation is that the operating system does not meet the standards of this test. So there you go. It has passed absolutely nothing. So it has passed nothing. like it's like, oh, so as far as like physical entry, is it secure there? No, not really. Oh, okay. Well, what about like messing with the data? Can that be done easily? Yeah, that can actually be done easily. What about extracting the data? Is that a thing that can happen really? Yeah, people could extract it, and they can tamper with it. Oh, totally. Yeah, and they can mess with results. Oh, yeah, totally. Can anyone do that? Well, if you're a voter, there might be some evidence, but if you're an election official or whatever, oh, yeah, totally. And someone could physically alter it without even any tools. Yeah, totally, without any tools at all. How about the password? Is that secure? Yeah, the password is 12345. Oh, wait, did I say that out loud? Darn it! You know what I heard, actually? I heard John Podesta is managing the password, so we should be fine. That's not actual, yeah. That's not an actual report, by the way. That's just me being facetious. Although, would it surprise you? So there you go. Sleep tight. That's what we have to look forward to. That is what we have to look forward to. That's, I mean, there was nothing uplifting in that entire report. It literally, if we were giving grades on every point that they tested and brought up, they would get an F. Every single thing, it was like, yeah, the data is not encrypted properly. Yeah, the physical points of entry, very easily accessible. Yeah, the data is not secure. Yeah, the software does not meet the requirements of this testing agency. Like, if these machines were a student in the 3rd grade, they would not be going to 4th grade in the fall. But not only did they pass the 3rd grade, they got promoted to freaking high school. That's what happened here. They're like, hey, yeah, you failed everything. We're going to use you in the 2020 presidential election. It's like that's like, hey, you're going from third grade to high school, except you freaking failed third grade. That's what they're doing with these machines, and they're using them. This is what's happening in California. This is what's happening in California. And by the way, they say that you can switch your parties and stuff like that up until the day of. That is technically true, but if you do that, you're handed a provisional ballot. And what does that provisional ballot mean? That means your vote ain't getting counted. That's what it means. And if you have no party preference, you can vote for president, but you need to say those magic words: crossover ballot, Democratic crossover ballot. If you just say Democratic ballot, they're not going to give it to you. They're instructed not to give it to you. Well, you're not a Democrat. You're an NPP, sorry. And if you just take your NPP ballot, it ain't going to have president on it. You need to say the magic words, Democratic crossover ballot, or you not get one. It's almost like they want to make voting really difficult. Almost like it. And you can go mail-in. You can go mail-in. But, there's different evidence there. I mean, Greg Palast has revealed some things that's not as safe as we think. Other organizations have revealed that's your best bet. So, you got to take your pick, basically. But these are the machines we're going to use. This is them. This is them. Thank you for sharing that, Robin. Thank you for sharing that. So, this is an interesting article I wanted to share, shifting gears a little bit here. So, usually when you hear the word identity politics, it's being used in the negative by, people on the left and especially on the right. And what I've always thought, and I've said this before, is that, well, what you're really referring to, when somebody says like, oh, identity politics, isn't that, usually what they mean is what they're against isn't identity politics by itself as an idea. What they're against is identity politics being weaponized for dishonest means. And those are two different things. Those are just two very different things. Identity politics on its own is just the idea that different groups of people who face different struggles organize and form alliances, and they make those issues known. That's what identity politics is. That, in and of itself, is not a bad thing. That's a good thing. That's totally a good thing. The bad thing is identity politics being weaponized for dishonest means. And that's when you see things like, hey, this person is black or this person is whatever, and they just represent what the establishment wants. They don't represent what you want. But let's ignore that part. Let's ignore that part. And if you criticize Pete Buttigieg, it's because you're homophobic. I mean, I know someone tried to tweet that recently. There was, and I forget who it was, but it went pretty viral on the Twitter where they were just like, oh, how are you not inspired that a gay person has made it this far? And a bunch of gay people responded and were like, you know what? I'm not inspired because just because he's gay doesn't mean he's a good candidate. And he's actually a terrible candidate, and I'm not supporting him. They were like, a lot of people were like, look, just because. So you get the idea. I don't need to explain it anymore. But here's an interesting article by a woman named Barbara Smith. I helped coin the term identity politics. I'm endorsing Bernie Sanders. I support Sanders because I believe his campaign is currently the best hope for helping marginalized Americans. In 1977, this is from the article, I co-authored the Combahee River Collective Statement, a document that emphasized the overlapping forms of economic and social oppression faced by Black women. The Combahee Statement coined the term identity politics. This was in 1977. And it was instrumental in pushing the international left and other political movements to understand inequality as a structural and intersectional phenomenon which affects oppressed groups differently. So that's what identity politics actually is. That's what it's intended for. Different oppressed groups, face different types of oppression differently, and they try to have those points of view represented. Those ideas continue to reverberate today. I am often disheartened, however, to see support for identity politics and intersectionality reduced to buzzwords. I am supporting Bernie Sanders for president because I believe that his campaign and his understanding of politics complements the priority that women of color defined decades ago. In other words, identity politics, the idea, does not just mean that you have different groups of people, different representatives from different groups of people, different races, ethnicities, religions, and so forth, that all serve the same agenda. That's not what identity politics means. It doesn't mean, well, we have a black neoliberal and we have a gay neoliberal and we have a Muslim neoliberal and we have that. That's not what that means. That's not what identity politics actually is. That's called weaponizing identity politics for dishonest means. And that's what the Democratic establishment does. And here's more from this article. I was born into Jim Crow in 1946. The country I grew up in, with few exceptions, was brutally committed to keeping people like me in their place. This is from the article. This is Barbara Smith speaking. My family were among, it'd be kind of funny if somebody just came into this show now and they didn't realize what I was talking about and they thought that was me. He's speaking firsthand, I was born in 1946. And they're like, dude, I don't think you were. Anyway, I was born into Jim Crow in 1946, says Barbara Smith. The country I grew up in, with few exceptions, was brutally committed to keeping people like me in their place. My family were among the courageous African Americans who participated in the first wave of the Great Migration after the First World War. At the same time that I was growing up in Cleveland, Bernie Sanders, who was a few years older, was growing up in Brooklyn. He noticed some of the paradoxes and injustices that I did and came to a similar conclusion. We needed to get involved. Because there's little understanding of the terrifying conditions of the mid-20th century U.S. apartheid, some people dismiss Sanders' involvement in the civil rights struggle as insignificant, or think that many white people at the time supported black liberation and human rights. Far from it. I support Sanders because, unlike most people of his generation, he decided as a young person to challenge Jim Crow. I wonder if other candidates can say the same. Well, Joe Biden sure as hell can't. Sanders has devoted most of his life to social movements. He has shaped them and been shaped by them. He understands that the most substantial and meaningful change comes from the bottom up, not the top down. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, to name two examples, would not have happened without the movement organizing. The Vietnam War ended because a mass movement finally forced the political establishment to end carnage. Sanders and I were in that movement too. At least 140 people in the United States live in poverty or do not have enough income to cover their family's basic needs of food, housing, and healthcare. Women, people of colors, members of the LGBTQ plus community, people with disabilities, children, and elders are disproportionately part of this 140 million. Some critics have questioned whether Sanders is concerned about the specific ways that people with varying intersecting identities express oppression. As a Black lesbian feminist who has been out since the mid-1970s, I believe that among all the candidates, his leadership offers us the best chance to eradicate the unique injustices that marginalized groups in America endure. In 2016, I served on the LGBTQ steering committee for the Sanders campaign. I am even more excited to support him now. And keep in mind, when you say Bernie bro, these are the people you're marginalizing. You're marginalizing the Barbara Smiths of the world. Someone who has been a Black feminist activist for decades and decades now, and who was born into Jim Crow in 1946. I mean, I get it. I mean, if anyone, meets the Bernie bro stereotype, it's me. It's me. I totally get that. I am a punk rock loving lefty who enjoys hockey and is a white dude in glasses. I get it. But I'm not the only person that supports Bernie Sanders. Far from it. Far from it. This is a really powerful article, and I think it's a really important article as we go about the discussions we have in society. And here you have someone who's like, hey, man, this is what identity politics is. This is what we were fighting for. The stuff that they tell you in the corporate media, that's not what we were fighting for. We were not fighting for just a bunch of people serving neoliberal ideals. And some of them happen to not be white men, but they're still serving those same neoliberal ideals. That's not the point of identity politics. That's called weaponizing identity politics for dishonest means. So, very interesting piece. Very interesting piece. Shout out to Barbara Smith for writing that and for all of her work. Very cool. I'm glad we're able to share that. Guys, I have a guest today, and we're going to go to that guest very shortly, if you will stay tuned. This guest is going to be Mr. Will Johnson, who is running for California's 46th district. His website is willforthepeople.com. That's with the number 4. And he's going to join us very, very shortly. So stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, what's up? It's New Wave Vader here on Get Your News On with Ron. I always do the interviews because I'm better at it. The people have spoken. I'm really good at the interviews. Why? Because I jam with Galaxy Glam. I'm not like, oh, I'm going to yell about stuff. I jam with Galaxy Glam, and then I get to know people, and it's awesome. So our guest today is Will Johnson. He is running for the 46th district in California, and he's here to tell us all about his campaign. Will, how are you today?
Good. How are you, New Wave Vader?
I am crushing it. Every day is an opportunity. I'm in a duo with Iggy Pop. You might have heard of us. We're called Galaxy Glam. Look for our Bandcamp. It is coming soon. It's so different these days. I mean, dude, I come from the 77 era where you would do a record and you would print it on vinyl. Nowadays, it's all digital. We live in a world of singles, not people, like singles, like songs. People too, I guess. I don't know. I've been enjoying Tinder, but that's a different story. Anyway, Will, thanks for being here today. So your website is willforthepeople.com, which I think would make a really good throwback emo band from the 90s. But that's not what it is. It's actually your website, and you're running for California's 46th district. Explain this to me.
Well, I'm running in a district where the guy is literally the co-chair of the Blue Dog Caucus, and he's only been the representative at the U.S. level for only a few terms, but he's been in politics forever, and is just a business. He basically services business at every opportunity, and gives lip service to the people. Only has maybe an issue or two where he actually is on their side, but most of the time it's whoever pays him the most is where he's going to actually his alliances are.
So he serves big money interests instead of the people, which, by the way, this black cat isn't scared of me anymore, which is totally cool. For the longest time, she was scared of like all the machinery and stuff. But now, see, a machine hand can pet you the same way a real hand can.
Don't be afraid, Lucy.
This is cool, man. I mean, this is Lucy. Way to go. See, Lucy loves machine and real humans. This is a true testament to love. Are you a cat person, Will?
I like cats and dogs. I have a dog right now, but yeah, cats are great too.
There's a very politician-esque answer. You're ready for the campaign trail. So what are the top 3 most important issues to you, and how are you different than your opponent on those issues?
Well, on all of them, he doesn't support them at all. But number 1 for sure is Medicare for all. Then tuition-free public college, which I would include all community colleges and trade schools as well. And I would even go further than Bernie's and say we should include graduate level, not just the first 4 years. And then it's kind of a close tie with the Green New Deal, $15 an hour minimum wage, and cannabis legalization.
Aren't all those kind of connected? Because a Green New Deal also incorporates a jobs program, or at least it should, which of course gets into living wages. And of course, cannabis, because in our new energy revolution, there's certainly a place for hemp and cannabis, even more so than just, smoking it to have a good time, which I did a lot of in the 70s, Will. That's neither here nor there.
Probably 80s and 90s as well.
Dude, that was a dark time for me, man. I mean, post Jedi, I kind of had that lull, and I actually sort of got off the wagon for a little bit. But this isn't about me. This is about you. So why do you include graduate school when it comes to free college tuition?
Because basically, in this day and age, just having a 4-year degree is almost like the high school diploma of the 70s and 80s. So just having that alone isn't going to guarantee that you'll have a good opportunity, for, high paying jobs in the future. So I believe we really need to have graduate school included, especially also to compete with other countries, which, they're pumping out engineers and all sorts of other high level jobs on the daily. And we're falling behind in that respect.
When people ask you, how are you going to pay for this? What do you tell them?
Well, the estimate at Bernie, I think, is around 70 billion a year. I would go 100 billion. And he likes to take it out of a Wall Street tax, which would be fine. But I would take it 100 billion straight out of the defense budget. We blow way too much money on defense as it is. It's up to almost 800 billion a year. Like, what could you do? Okay, we can't spend.
But Will, don't other countries spend that same amount of money on defense too?
No,
they don't.
No, I think China's up to maybe 150 billion a year, and that's like pushing it.
Oh, that's crazy! I didn't know this.
So all the rest of our allies combined don't even come close to what we spend every year.
I have no idea. Do we spend more than the Empire does?
Well, I'd have to look up the numbers on that, but
I am pretty sure. So I mean, I know that the currency has changed over the years, but I'm pretty sure that the Death Star cost at least the equivalent of $50 to build. They actually did not include me in a lot of the planning. I was a little bummed out about it, and I had a bit of a temper back then. I used to be able to do this thing where I could just use my mind and I would choke people. It was pretty badass, but some people got hurt. And then I was like, dude, I'm off of this. This is too, for a while, I thought the whole thing was just a really bad LSD experience. And they were like, no, Vader, bro's dead. And I was like, oh, snap. But anyway, so we spend that much on defense. And a lot of our wars, well, all of our wars, we have no business being in. It's just about exploitations and resources. We are literally behaving like an empire, and I can speak firsthand that that does not end well. That ain't the way to go.
No, we're guaranteed to end up like the Romans in no time. I mean, it's up to, I think, 800 bases just scattered around the world, just for no apparent reason other than to have a footprint in somewhere, like you say, to either take over their democratically elected government or eventually steal their resources, or both. And that's just outrageous that we keep spending that. And not to mention, I've heard also each one of those bases has a pollution footprint. So that's why the Defense Department always is the top polluter in the whole wide world.
So let's get into your specific story then. Why did you decide to run for office?
Well, it was an inspiration from Bernie Sanders. I'd been listening to him forever, ever since he was on Ed's show on MSNBC. And I always thought...
So like 2016 or before 2016?
Oh, like 2008.
Oh, wow, man. Yeah. You're an early adapter, man. You were like on the scene. Like basically it's like you had some of the early albums. Although Bernie's been pumping out stuff since like the 70s, bro.
Of course. But what's funny is, like, in 2008, so I'd heard his spiel, they need to pay their fair share in taxes, and if they don't, then we need to make sure that they do, so that the working people, all on and on and on again. So that when he came to run for president in 2016, I kept thinking, well, God, I've heard this all before. You got something new? I mean, but I forgot no one had really heard. I mean, it's not like MSNBC has, 100 million people watching at any time. So when the real people actually heard the message, they're like, oh man, this is awesome. And I just, it was in my own bubble the whole time thinking everyone had heard Bernie over and over again for the last 8 years before.
I understand, Will. Now here's the thing. New Wave Vader, of course, has only been a Bernie Sanders fan for a couple weeks now. I found out about single payer healthcare. I was like, that's totally gnarly. When I lost my hand from shredding too hard, which is actually what happened, it would have been cool to have something like single payer healthcare. All my British friends were like, bro, you paid how much for that? It was crazy. And also, I heard that Bernie was instrumental in an early punk venue in Burlington, Vermont, that I totally played some in the 80s. So I was like, yeah, I like this Bernie guy. But Ron, on the other hand, he's been following that stuff a long time. And I know he always says in 2008, he was a supporter of Dennis Kucinich. And so finally, it was like Bernie was a viable candidate for what a lot of lefties have been saying for a long time.
Yeah, because, I mean, especially when you bring up Medicare for All, at least when I first heard it in 2016, I'm like, that sounds great, but can it happen? Yes, it can. And the way he spelled it out is just perfect. It's a system that automatically saves more money than the current system, where a lot of the waste goes to just these insurance companies for their advertising, their overhead, and various other things. And the point I would make to people that, especially when they hear the nonsense about you getting your insurance taken away, look, there is not a single plan out there, maybe other than one that the Congress people have, where your plan covers everything. Everything. You're not going to go broke. You're not going to have this crazy bill come 2 months after your procedures and be like, oh, you owe 30 grand. No, and it's just amazing that isn't pushed more and more out there in the the mainstream media, of course, because guess who their commercials are run by? Pharmaceuticals and health insurance companies. So they don't want no part of that. And that's why we keep seeing the nonsense against Medicare for All, even though after all the big push of the last few months, it's still over 50% support with the American people.
All right. So let's get specific to your campaign and how people can get involved. So you're going to be on the ballot on Super Tuesday then?
Yes, I am.
And then to make that runoff, you will then go on to the general, correct?
If I finish second.
If you finish second.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's a good, who's all in the race? Is it just you and that incumbent, or like what are you up against?
No, there's 3 other people, I should say. I ran actually the year before, but I got in so late. I knew nobody, and actually got almost 1,500 votes. But this time around, there's a guy who was there also before, and he's just like some tech guy who's self-funding, but doesn't really have any kind of message. There's another Democrat who basically says what I'm saying, but just not as forcefully, and uses the buzzwords of affordable and living this, and just real general. You don't get the impression that he really believes in the policies like I do. And the other one's a Republican. Now, this is the big challenge because it's a part of Orange County, California. And if you don't know, there still is a lot of Republican holdovers. And so he's probably going to get a lot of votes just for having that R next to his name. But this guy has literally no desire to give rights to gay people and just talks nonstop about transgender. Like, what are you doing? What about the issues? He just keeps going over the same stuff you'd hear on Fox News. And he would be a disaster for us. And it would be a disastrous race if it was this blue dog incumbent and this Republican who's still stuck in 1950. So that's why I hope that a lot of people come out and vote for me so that I can be the second place finisher. And I guarantee, if I get in that race, it's going to be 7 months or so to the general. I can easily beat the incumbent.
How has campaigning been, or have people been receptive to you?
They have, but I mean, I didn't get no help from any organizations, so it's pretty much all me. I take the materials I bought with my own money, and I make maybe 20 grand a year. So I got like flyers and door hangers, and I just walk on average 10 miles a day, going to different houses, putting out the materials, talking to anybody outside who's like, hey, just so you know, I'm in the race and this is what I'm going to stand for. It says it right on that it's for Medicare for All, tuition-free public college. I mean, I couldn't put a whole list of things that I'm for also, but those 2 are the big major issues that are that this district really cares about.
So where can people go to learn more about you and to get involved?
www.will4thepeople.com. At this point, donating money, because it's only like a couple weeks later, or I'm sorry, a couple weeks till the actual election, it's not going to help as much. Really, just if you know people who live in the Anaheim, Santa Ana, Orange area, go out to vote on March 3rd.
Man.
So
You're
that's
the first
really,
person running for office I've ever heard of not asking for money.
I mean, if this was I'll be honest.
That's pretty punk rock, dude.
If it was a few months before, I would ask, but I mean, at this point, it's just, it wouldn't do any good.
Understand.
Far better just to get the word out.
Well, best wishes to you and everybody watching at home. Go to willforthepeople.com. That's will4thepeople.com. It's a pretty rock and roll name for a website. He's a pretty rock and roll candidate. He doesn't want your dollars. He wants your freaking vote. He wants to change this country. Will, I respect that, dude. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, New Wave Vader. You have a good one.
Cheers, man. Vader says later.
Take it easy.
All right. So that was Will Johnson, Will for the People. Pretty cool stuff. Guys, I'm going to go to you. And man, it's hard for New Wave Vader to read because, man, it's been a long couple decades. What can I say? Start Mania, thank you very much for the Super Chat contribution. A Mars, hope you liked your gift. Have a great weekend. Thank you, A Mars. I will have to look into that. I think Ron has not been at his P.O. box for a little bit, but he'll have to go back shortly. Trendiest Dabbers, thank you for everything, Ron. Thank you, Trendiest Dabbers, for the awesome stuff that you sent Ron. He mentioned it to me. I hope you got the new shirt and hoodie. He did. I sent you a huge box, but I'm sure you got it. It was 3 boxes in one. I'm sure Ron is really into all the 3 boxes. In fact, he might be playing in them right now. I bet him and the cat are just playing in the boxes because Lucy bailed. I don't know where she is, but Trendiest Dabbers, Ron definitely says thank you very much, and thank you for your Super Chat contribution. Castillo, Boot Edge Putin's buddy. Castillo, New Wave Vader doesn't know what any of that means, but thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. That's awesome. Sparky, we're going to openly cheat, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. The establishment, election fraud, it's bad, it's nationwide. Whoa, Sparky, I'm with you. ID politics, Sparky, you're back. ID politics keeps ingredients out of the melting pot. Okay, yeah, totally. I'm with you. I'm not sure I catch on to the metaphor entirely, but I see what you're saying. It's interesting. That's poetic. Poetry. Man, now I got to smoke some pot. But speaking of which, here's Trendiest Dabbers again. Cannabis is the correct term. Thank you for showing it the respect it deserves. Thank you for that, and I will let Will know as well. Thank you, Trendiest Dabbers. Hashtag no law regarding cannabis. Hashtag trendy pain oil. Over 50 uses. Thank you very much for that, Trendy as Dabbers. And Inks Pixels. So the combination is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the stupidest combination I've ever heard in my life. That's the kind of thing an idiot would have on his luggage. Right on, Inks Pixels. Right on. Guys, thank you so much for being part of the stream today. If you want to support the show on the sustainability end, please do consider becoming a patron. Patreon.com/Ron Placone. I know Ron's trying to do this Sounds of Revolution series where he talks to musicians and other creatives about what they want in 2020. I don't know why he won't just have me on as a guest. I'm like, dude, me and Iggy. I don't know if Iggy will be able to make it, but I'll be there. And I'll tell you, I like that Bernie guy. Maybe that's why he won't have me on. He's like, you're always on the show, and you say you like that Bernie guy. That's all you say. I don't know. How are we going to talk? I was like, bro, I got stories. So anyway, hopefully he has me on as a guest. And I know he's also trying to make mini documentaries around city-owned internet, which is a really cool cause. I'm learning about that. With city-owned internet, you can stream all the old movies I was in like way easier because you'll have better internet at a better price, and you don't have to worry about a post-net neutrality world. I don't know exactly what that means, but Ron can tell you it's really freaking bad. The idea of an internet without net neutrality. Anyway, yeah. So patreon.com/Ron Placone if you are so able. Start Mania, A Mars, Trendiest Dabbers, Castillo, Sparky. Trendy as Dabbers again, Inks Pixels. Thank you guys very much for the super chat contribution. Thank you very much to our guest, Will, for being so freaking cool and awesome. And again, that website is willforthepeople.com. That's Will, the number 4, thepeople.com. The podcast drops tomorrow. Ooh, take a look out for that. Get your news on with Ron wherever you get your podcast. And until then, you know the drill. Ron says peace and Lucy says meow. And, I say later. Vader says later. See you later.